Hey, Comics Cubers. Our guest today is Erica Eng. She's an Eisner Award winner for Best Webcomic of 2020, and she's from Malaysia. You will be able to see her at the Philippine International Comics Festival 2025 on July 5 and 6 at SM Megamall Megatrade Hall, and you will be able to see me there too. We're talking to her about her comic book Fried Rice, and the reason it's called Fried Rice is so she wanted to make it feel like a home cooked meal and also as a tribute to her mom's cooking and her favorite comfort food. I'm excited to get you guys to discover her, to see her work. Fried Rice is about a girl from Malaysia who gets rejected from art school in New York. It kind of mirrors what Erica's journey was like and some sliding doors. Um, Basically, Erica Eng got rejected from art school and then won an Eisner in that order. And I think that's pretty cool. Without further ado, Erica Eng. Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. I am honored to be joined by Erica Eng, the Eisner Award winner for Best Webcomic in 2020 and the Ringo Award winner for Fried Rice. And Erica will be joining the Philippine International Comics Festival this year on July 5 to 6 at Megamall SM Megatrade Hall. Come join us, come see her. This book is great. Erica, I have one question that I ask to everyone who comes onto my show for the first time, which is, why do you love comics?
Uh, I would. First of all, thank you for having me, Doi. And in answer to your question, I studied animation, and so my first passion, I think, was for film, and I loved film. I would always read screenplays, so I always describe my relationship to comics like an arranged marriage, like because I couldn't really do uh like work on films because I was just like one person. So I found comics and I was like, hey, this is really a really cool medium to tell stories and I like it as well. And then I kind of fell in love with it that way.
That's amazing. Do you remember the first comics where you fell in love with comics?
Mm, well, I've been reading comics for a long time, like most people. Um, and I really enjoyed Lat's comics. Lat is a Malaysian artist. Have you
Yeah.
heard of him? LAT. So I think the first comic book that I read was probably Kampong Boy.
Okay.
And I've always enjoyed reading comics. I think Matsom by Lat was the first graphic novel that I read, like
Oh, really?
over and over and over.
Oh, I am not familiar with the Malaysian comic scene. I am very interested in finding out more about it, though. You are actually the second Malaysian cartoonist I've had on the show.
Oh, who's
Um,
the first?
she's a webtoon artist named Stephanie. So you said comics for you are like an arranged marriage. Obviously, there is a big difference between animation or film and comics, which is that in film and animation, the frames are carrying the viewer. You have no choice. Your eyes are fixed to the screen. In
Mhm.
comics, you control the movement. What was that like for you going from trying to do screenplays to comic scripts, realizing that huge difference?
Hmm. I think I realized the difference when I read, like it kind of like I had an epiphany on how that difference was when I was reading On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. It's a webcomic and she would have these panels where the characters would be talking a lot. So some panels were filled with like speech bubbles. And then some panels would be empty and you would just like look at it. And some panels would be really small. And then I realized that, oh, I'm spending much more time on this panel because I want to look at the illustration. There's like so much more detail in this panel. And then on this other panel, Um, I'm spending much more time on this one because there's a lot of text to read. And that kind of like made me think, oh, okay, so if I were to write my own comic, then I could manipulate like how long a reader stays on a page by making the drawing bigger and more detailed or putting more text in. And then I can make the action like faster if I'm like cutting with lots of smaller panels. And yeah, that's how that was the first comic that made me like really understand that.
What are your favorite animated movies or movies that inspired you to get into storytelling?
Hmm. I was interested in how uh, people would adapt written content into films because I was interested in that. So the movies that I was studying in college on my own time because we didn't have a movie class when I was in college. So I read screenplays of the Dark Knight trilogy. And I read like I studied, all three screenplays and then I watched the movies. Now look at the screenplays and I watch the movies and now think about wow, this director made this choice and all that and this actor filled in that part. Uh and I kind of became addicted to that. So I wouldn't say it's like mm, one particular film that taught me that,
No, it's three.
but right. Three and I also studied Call Me by Your Name
Yeah.
because they had a book about it and the book is like uh is kind of a lot of the book happens inside the character's head. So I was curious, okay, how would you adapt that into a screenplay? So I read the screenplay and I watched the movie and I went between the three. Um, and also Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread. I would say that's probably like my favorite movie. And I also read the screenplay for that.
Wow, you really studied this stuff. That's impressive.
Yeah, because I was a nerd.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say I wouldn't have this show if I wasn't. So, um, so talk to me about your process for making comics. So, like, let's say fried rice. I know you were putting it up on Tumblr. I'm assuming page by page. Tumblr still the greatest social media website ever invented, or at least the most mentally healthy social media website ever invented. Um, so I assume you're putting it up, and did you script these things first before you drew them?
Yes, I spent uh the last year of my college kind of brainstorming screenplay ideas. That's when I was studying movies. So I was writing, lots of different stories. And I wrote it in screenplay format because that was the format that I knew. And I was like, hey, I could write in screenplay format, adapt it to a comic. Um, so then I kind of like wrote a few drafts by, I want to say the middle of the year before I graduated. And that's when I started drawing, just brainstorming ideas on how I would draw it. So when September came, I had most of the script already like done. I think it was my third or fourth draft by then. So I started drawing the pages then. But the last act of the story, I think it was still like first or second draft. I knew how it was gonna go, but I hadn't like fully written it out yet. So I finished the last bit of the script while I was drawing the pages.
Is the story somewhat autobiographical?
Yes, it's semi-autobiographical, which basically means that I mm, and the main character obviously is not me. She doesn't have my name, but and I wrote her so that she would be a different person and have a different personality than me. But I wanted to put my experiences into the story, and so I made her go through that. Yeah.
Okay, the main character is named Min,
Mhm.
and she applies to go to art school in New York, where she is rejected. So I'm assuming you did the same thing.
I applied to art school in California. So I
California.
just,
So you just switched the state. So correct me if I'm wrong. Does this mean you got rejected from art school and then you won an Eisner?
yes, correct.
So there's a big what if in your life, which is what if you got into art school in California? Do you think you would have still made this comic, for example, or do you think you would have gotten directly into animation if that was the case?
I think I would have went like full throttle into animation because I made this comic because I was studying for my degree online. So I was like, I have all this time. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. And I was like, okay, I can do my studies and work on my own project. So I was like, this is a good project to have. So I think if I ended up being accepted into an American college, I would not have made comics.
That's a way different universe. That's interesting. I'm going to go ahead and say we are lucky to have you in this one. So fried rice, you put it out as a web comic, and it won an Eisner in 2020. Can you? I was looking at the back matter, and you were saying that you were still looking for a style to draw fried rice in when you were starting. How do you decide on which style of art you're going to use? And are there any particular artists that you emulate with the style that you use?
Around that time, I really liked Chris Sasaki, who's like an artist at Pixar. I think he's still there. And I also liked Mike Dutton, Maria Yi, um, Helen Oxenberry, then some other like random comic artists that I found online. So I knew that I liked their styles, but when I was in still in school, I had a tendency to adapt the styles that I liked and then kind of like draw in that style. So I didn't feel like I had my own style. Um, so I absorbed all of this from the artists that I love, and then I decided to take a break from looking at art for about 3 months. I just was like, I'm not gonna look at art anymore. I'm just gonna concentrate on drawing and trying to find something that I like. So I knew that I like pencils because I didn't really enjoy like the inked. Maybe it's just because I wasn't that good at drawing in inks. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use pencils. And then kind of went from there and experimented. The lines were done traditionally. So I drew them in pencils and then I did like an ink wash over the drawings with walnut ink. And I scanned them in and I colored them digitally.
Can you talk to me about your use of color? Because your use of color is very striking. Where does that come from? What kind of sensibilities do you use when coloring?
Hmm. I always thought that my sense of color was not very good or very adventurous. In fact, I struggled a lot with it, and I still do. So maybe it was just me being limited in my mastery of color that just led me to use a more limited color palette. And I like to look at films, like real life films, Eric Romer, like really realistic looking films and draw from those films, those palettes. Um, yeah, I think the colors for fried rice are quite muted because of that.
Yeah, it I do think it adds to the atmosphere of fried rice that it's a little muted. The colors are it makes it feel like something she's remembering rather than something that is currently happening. Um, one of the things that strikes me about fried rice as I was reading it, not to spoil anyone, I'm sorry, but is that when things happen to Min, her reactions are a little bit more subdued, right? They're a little subtle. For example, she gets rejected from art school, but she doesn't, she never cries and she never yells, or just things that you might expect from a traditional story, traditional comic book, traditional movie. Was that a conscious choice on your end to not really over exaggerate Min's reactions?
Yes, it was a conscious choice because I was hyper aware of the tone that I was trying to get across. It was the first story that I was really telling seriously, and I hated it whenever stories would like take a left turn and you would feel like a tone switch, like,
Mhm.
and it would just feel like out of place. So I was very hyper aware of what kind of story that I wanted to tell, and making sure that it felt cohesive. I don't know how else to put it, but just felt like in that universe, someone who would be screaming and crying would not fit in the story that I was telling. And I also like didn't draw any thought bubbles for the characters, so you wouldn't know what they were thinking. And I made that another conscious choice. So I was like, it was a way for to challenge myself. Um, how can I get these characters' feelings across without actually explicitly telling the reader what she or he is thinking? So it would challenge me to think of more creative ways to write a scene, um, what a character could do and interact with their surroundings. And and yeah, because Min's character, I felt she would be a very level-headed person, a calm person, something that honestly I aspire to be because I'm not so I'm not as calm and level-headed as her. So I was thinking, how would she react? How would she do this? And I want like consciously also wanted her to be a likable person. Um, so I was thinking, okay, how do I make my main character someone that would appeal to readers and someone you could empathize with and identify with, you know?
Yeah. When you put this up, when you were putting this up on Tumblr, what was the reaction like?
Well, before the Eisner, I don't think I had many readers. I think I had one person who was mutual friends with, who was friends with my friend, and he reached out to me and was like, "Wow, I love this story that you're writing." And it was just one guy, and everyone else like didn't read it, including my own family and my friends. So I was just posting it to maybe one person. I don't know. Then after I got to Iceland, and people started reading it. And that was honestly, it was very early on in the comic, which was why I did not expect to win at all. I know that now I'm like, whenever I talk to comics people, they're like, wow, you got an Eisner. But I don't even, honestly, I got the Eisner when I got nominated for it when I was 30 something pages in. And 30 something pages. There's
Right.
like hardly any story yet. So it was honestly, it felt miraculous. And I was like, wow, I'm so grateful.
So fried rice, I really just think because I love slice of life comics. I love it when shows, something that comes from reality, but doesn't hate reality. You know what I mean? Because a lot of like
Mhm.
quote unquote slice of life people tend to show how much they hate living in the world. And you don't do that. I think with your work, even though Min is going through a difficult time with rejection and her cousin leaving and all of that, you still show that there is beauty in the world and there is hope in the world, and it's in the world is very colorful. Is that something that you is that in fact the message that you wanted readers to get out of it?
Mm. I had this value when I'm writing, uh, and it's very closely tied to my own faith that when I'm writing something, when I'm creating something, and putting something out, it has to come from a good place. Even though what I'm feeling, honestly, might be really bad, or I might be really depressed, because I do go through dark times. And even though that it will be honest to write something that's depressing and dark, but I always felt like, no, I have to write out of love because God creates out of love and goodness. So that was a value that I always held very closely, and I came up with it when I was writing Fried Rice. I was thinking about all the people that I was basing the characters on, and I was like, you cannot hate these people that you're writing about. You may, I had um issues with my parents because I didn't feel like they truly supported me or encouraged me. And I had resentment when I was in high school, honestly, which was why I wrote Mean to be a different person. Because when I was in high school, I honestly felt a lot of resentment. And I was like, oh, I kind of wasted all those years being resentful. And how do I redeem that time? You know, like I felt like I wasted that time being resentful and wishing to have something that I didn't have and not appreciating what I had. So when I wrote the story, I was like, you have to write out of love. And when you're writing these characters, you have to love them. If you feel anything bad in your heart, then you have to stop. So I hope that what you're saying means that I got that across
Yeah,
in the story. Yeah.
it's incredible because you do write in the back matter that this was a very cathartic experience for you making the book, and also that it was an act of gratefulness. And I think that a lot of people can really look at that and be inspired to maybe make their own and put their thoughts to paper and draw things. It does come across very clearly that you are a very religious person. And I was looking at your website earlier, um, and I don't know if I've ever seen fanfic of The Chosen. I thought that was
Yeah.
interesting.
I forgot I did that.
Um, talking about the process again. I know that in terms of comics, like in terms of comics, most comics are made by one writer and one artist, and most of the time those are not the same two people. So this is something that I've always found interesting because the fandom tends to credit the writer more often than not than the artist. Now, doing both the writing and the art, where would you say the bulk of your work actually goes to?
Hmm.
I guess that's a difficult question because I think like laying a page out and also pacing it counts as both writing and art, huh?
Yeah, you have to think about that when you're writing.
Yeah.
And then you think about it again when you're drawing and maybe make some changes.
I guess that's a better question. How often does artist you change the script from writer you?
Mm, I'm trying to remember.
It's
what
okay. You made this comic
I
before the
did.
pandemic. It's okay if you don't remember.
Uh, right. Because I would keep editing as at every stage when I'm writing, and then I would rewrite and rewrite. And then when I'm revisiting the script to draw, I would rewrite some things, but not like the whole thing. Just maybe this dialogue feels a bit awkward, so I'll change it.
Okay.
Someone's, yeah, that is too long, and I'll shorten it. And then sometimes I was just lazy. I was like, I don't want to spend so much time in this space. I don't want to keep drawing this. So I'm cutting out this scene. Uh, yeah, I think it's hard to say which process takes the most work because writing is like more strenuous on your brain,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to do a lot of soul searching when you're writing. You're like, where's this coming from? What am I trying to say? What am I trying to achieve? Blah, blah, blah. But drawing is definitely more time consuming and laborious. So, time wise, drawing is way more work, but writing is a lot of the creative work, which is hard on the brain.
The
Also,
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
oh, when you get like a contract for a graphic novel, right? Like, let's say your page gets accepted by a publisher and they buy it, the artist gets more pay. So I don't know what that
Because it's
says,
more
but
time.
because it's more time.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that writing is not hard. Mm, writing is hard, but in a different way.
Do you think you're saying that writing is harder because drawing comes naturally to you because you've been drawing since forever?
I think it's harder. Oof. Maybe it's because I wrote it, so I already envisioned. So when
Uh,
I envision it, so when it comes to drawing it, I'm just executing something. Like it feels more like okay, the story's already done. Now I just have to get it out. If that makes sense.
this comic came out in 2020. Well, you self-published this book, didn't you?
Last year, yeah.
Yeah, you self-published this book last year. Um, how has the reaction been?
The reaction. Hmm. I meet some people who say that, oh, I was reading it when it was a web comic, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And I, the reaction, well, everyone has been really nice. And everyone has, been like, wow, it's either like, wow, it's so cool that you made a book, or wow, I love your book, or something like that. I don't know. Um,
It In the time since you have in fact become an animator, right? I saw your short film farewell on your website, which is really cool. Very touching. Everybody go watch it. And in that time, have you have you basically decided whether or not you were going to prioritize animation or comics?
hmm, interesting question. But over the past year and a half, I've prioritized my career in animation, definitely, because it's like my day job now. And while I'm still doing stuff like this, promoting my comic book, but for most of the time, Monday to Friday, I'm working my day job.
And you can't
Um,
beat a steady paycheck. Right?
yeah, but I always love writing, and I still do write, but when it comes to like time commitment, I don't have the time that I used to have anymore. So yeah, unfortunately, animation has taken up most of my time.
It's okay. You love doing it. So,
Hmm.
you were here last year for the Philippine International Comics Festival, which is actually the shirt I am wearing right now. I really should have framed that better to begin with. But and you are coming back this year for the Philippine International Comic Festival. What is it like promoting your comic in the Philippines? Do
Oh my
you like
gosh.
the traffic?
The traffic is very similar to Malaysian traffic,
Oh, really?
except you guys have more motorcycles for some reason. So many
Oh, yeah, we do.
motorcycles. It's like, wow, that's a lot of motorcycles. But otherwise, it's quite comparable to the traffic that I experience in the city here in Malaysia.
In KL?
Hmm.
Mhm.
Have you been to KL?
Yeah, I love KL. I've been there twice.
Oh, do you think it's the same or do you feel like it's different?
I think it's different, but I also think KL is smaller. So I think it's easier to get around KL
Huh.
just because I think it's smaller than Manila.
Hmm.
I could
I didn't
also
get
be
this.
wrong, and I might just be in a very small part of KL every time.
Which part were you in?
I'm always near Petronas.
Oh, Central KL.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's called KL, but KL is like it has, London, it has different parts. So
Yeah.
KL, yeah, you have different parts of the city that you can't really reach with public transport. You have to drive.
Okay. Yeah. Manila's the
Mm-hmm.
same way. You're never actually in Manila, but you're in Metro
Right.
Manila. Um,
Yeah, I guess it's kind of the same. I love the Filipino readers. I think I had the best experience with readers when I was there because
really?
because you guys really enjoy reading.
We're very excited.
Excited about books or just
I think just in
in general?
general, we're an excited people.
Right. And very enthusiastic, very like, yeah. Oh, I loved it there. I've never been to a festival in Malaysia.
Really?
Yeah, I've never participated in a comic festival here because I always have something going on.
Oh, that's too bad.
Hmm.
That's too
I was
bad.
planning on doing it this year, but I had something else like that would clash with the comic art fiesta here. But I always got the impression that Malaysians prefer to buy merch. Again, I
Okay.
could be wrong because I've never boothed here before, but that's the impression I get. They like merch. They like pretty things that you can hang on the wall. But when I was in Manila, I felt like, wow, people really enjoy reading because you would see people walking around with like piles of books. And I was like, these are my kind of people.
Well, to be fair, buying books and reading books are two different hobbies.
That's true.
My read pile is so big. Um, so I look forward to meeting you on July 5 and 6 at the Philippine International Comics Festival. Let's peek off. Um, do you have what else is new? What's new? What's up and coming for Erica Yang?
Well, I am rewriting my next book. I was posting it online as a webcomic, and then I was writing it and I hit a wall and I was like, you know what, I don't like this story. I don't like the way it's coming. So I'm rewriting that one. I don't know when it's gonna be out. But when I commit to a project, it will usually get somewhere. And then for more something more recent, well, this year I'm gonna be contributing to an anthology for a Singaporean publisher. It's about video games. So I'm working
Oh,
on that. Yeah,
What
it's a
about
really
video games?
short. Well, the anthology is the topic of the anthology is about video games. So I have to write a short story about that. So I'm gonna make a comic about that.
That
Just 10
sounds
pages.
that sounds fun. That sounds fun.
Mm-hmm.
I will be looking forward to it. Erica, this was great. I really look forward to seeing you and getting you to sign my book on the 5th of July at the Philippine International Comics Festival. Thank you for joining the Comics Cube. And is there? I had one last question. Right. If you could say one thing to your past self who was rejected from art school immediately after she was rejected from art
Oh.
school, what would you say?
Write a comic about it.
Well, evidently you did that anyway without you going back to talk about her about it.
Yeah. But I mean she got over it really quickly, so she's fine.
That's great. Thank you so much, Erica. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you for having me.